This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and welcome on, everyone. We appreciate your attendance, and for all those that will be watching this after the fact on our YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. My name is Matt Erb, and I'm a physiotherapist in Tucson, Arizona, and I am the chair of our complementary and integrative rehabilitation medicine networking group for webinars and social media. And I'd also like to introduce my co-chair, Peishan. Peishan, would you introduce yourself and give us a little background on what we're doing today?
Yes. Hi, Mac, and hi, speaker and everybody. Thank you for coming on Friday afternoon. I'm an assistant professor at Occupational Therapy Department of Georgia State University, and I'm co-chair this webinar with Matt. Our speaker today is Dr. Mark Pirtle, and the topic of discussion is using mindfulness to explore the link between trauma, stories, and illness. Before we get started with the presentation, I do want to advise that this meeting is being recorded. I would like to ask all attendees to keep your phones or mics mute and keep your cameras turned off throughout the presentation. We do expect to have about 5 to 10 minutes available for discussion at the end of webinar. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat box and we will address as many of those as we can.
Great, thank you, Peishan. And while our speaker today, Mark, is getting his slides up and sharing his screen, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Dr. Pirtle is a pioneer in integral thinking and stress relief and recovery. He is a clinician, teacher, consultant, writer, public speaker, and filmmaker. His work connects the dots between science, wellness, business, culture, and spirituality. Combining the disciplines of living systems theory, neuroscience, positive psychology, and mindfulness, he has developed an evidence-based program for healing stress-related illness called Skillfully Aware. He's also created and teaches a mindfully overcoming addictive behaviors 10-week online class for emindful.com. Dr. Pirtle's work emphasizes attunement skills through the use of meditation and mindfulness to empower his clients towards a healthier relationship with themselves, others, and the world. Dr. Pirtle produced a full-length documentary film titled, Is Your Story Making You Sick? The film released in the spring of 2019. Dr. Pirtle speaks professionally, consults with businesses and private clients, hosts retreats, teaches online classes, and teaches for the Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine Fellowship Program. Dr. Pirtle, we look forward to your talk, and we're now turning the presentation over to you. Just a reminder to everyone that you can use the chat feature to place questions across the presentation, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the conclusion of the presentation. Dr. Pirtle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you also, Peishan, for the opportunity to speak with your group today. I'm very grateful. I just want to go over the disclosures real quick. I have a sole practice here in Tucson, Arizona as well, and I derive most of my income through working with clients, teaching, consulting, speaking, and writing. My website is skillfullyaware.com. I'm also 50% owner of Lojan Productions. We were the ones that produced this film, Is Your Story Making You Sick? And I say I may receive royalties. We're not sure if the film will ever make money, but if that happens after we pay our benefactor back, that might be a possibility for me in the future. Story.movie is the website for that. Matt also mentioned I teach an online addictions course for eMindful, and then I'm faculty for the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine Fellowship Program at the U of A. Okay, so wonderful. I just want to remind you, we're gonna talk today about using mindfulness. I'm gonna go very deep into explaining what mindfulness is and how to do that, and using mindfulness as a platform, as a way to structure your consciousness so that you can begin to monitor and modify the sensitivities that arise out of your nervous system when you get triggered by certain contexts, thoughts, or sensations that then develop into a narrative structure, into stories. And if we get locked into a habit of a particular type of story, and I'll explain the stress and story connection later, that stress-related illnesses can arrive out of habits of thinking. So that's what we're going to explore today. Good. Now the objectives are to understand this process. It's a flow of activity. There's a stream of causality from biology to psychology, and also intentionality through which stress leads to emotion and then potentially to illness. I'm going to unpack all of that for you today. We're also going to talk about the critical role. Just in the very next slide, I'm going to describe the role attention and awareness plays in our consciousness. They function in two different ways, and it's important to understand the difference between attention and awareness so you can learn how to balance them and assess the balance of your consciousness moment to moment, which is mindfulness. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how to use this balanced consciousness to then set conscious intentions where if you have a habit of framing your relationship to yourself and life in a way that causes or amplifies pain, to then use positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and other modalities to reframe the narrative so you can begin the process of recovery from the inside out. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. But let me get started with a story that comes out of medieval English literature, the story of Beowulf. And if you're not familiar, Beowulf was a 6th century mercenary. And there was trouble in the land of Denmark. The King Ragnar was being assailed every night by this swamp creature called Grendel. And Grendel would crawl out of the swamp. He would break down the doors of the longhouse, and he would steal away young men and women, leaving a bloody trail. And this went on, this predation went on week after week, month after month, until Ragnar decided, I've got to get some help. And so he called on Beowulf and Beowulf's band of mercenaries to come in, and Ragnar promised Beowulf half of his kingdom and all the wealth if he could slay Grendel. And so one night, Beowulf and his men set up in the longhouse, waiting for Grendel to emerge from the swamp. And of course, Grendel comes. There's a titanic battle, and Beowulf is slain. And he crawls bloody and mortally wounded back into the swamp where he dies. The next night, there's this huge party, and the mead is flowing, and everybody is excited to kill the beast. And in the excitement, they only one of Beowulf's mercenaries is aware enough to see the doors of the longhouse break open again, and this mercenary wheels around and he screams, "Look, it's Grendel's mother!" And I tell you this story because we are focused on the beast. we're focused on the stress-related condition, all of our effort goes into killing addiction and depression and anxiety and chronic pain, all these recurring conditions, and we put every bit of our effort into killing the beast. But very little of our effort, if any, is given to killing the mother of the beast. And so I want to start off this discussion today talking about what is the mother of all stress-related condition. And the mother is a state of consciousness that we all experience. And that state is called attentional fixation. Now, you know attentional fixation. It's like tunnel vision. You know, we can drive just automatically from one place to another, and we get all the way home, and then all of a sudden we realize, how in the world did I get here? We were attentionally fixated. We very often fall into fixation when we're at home with our families. We're in a mood, and the mood takes us over, and the reactive shadow patterns that we'd like to wish we'd grow out of emerge out of us. It's because when we're in an attentionally fixated state, we're not aware, and we can't access our higher wisdom in that case. Shadow patterns just emerge. That's attentional fixation. So this is the state of consciousness that lies at the heart of every single stress-related condition. The person who's under stress falls into a state, amplifies their pain inadvertently, and that's what, if you stay fixated too long, you can change the way your brain functions, and the chemistry in your body shifts, and you will sensitize yourself to all manner of things depending on what your habit fixation. Okay, I hope you all understand where I'm going with. Okay, so now let's talk about consciousness a bit. And this little man here, this is a symbol of the consciousness that's residing inside you. The part of you that's listening to me and looking at the slide, that's the consciousness. Now, consciousness operates two ways. One way is that we have attention, and attention is the flashlight of consciousness. Attention, when you're holding a flashlight, imagine walking down a very dark wilderness path, have a flashlight. The flashlight only illuminates a small area of the path. Whatever you shine the flashlight on is what is illuminated in your consciousness. So attention has a scope, and it's rather narrow. Now, the other way that consciousness functions is that we have awareness. And awareness is more like sunlight. Sunlight shines radially in all directions. When your awareness is open, shines into three domains, potentially, shines into the world, meaning you can listen to me and be aware of the room in which you're sitting right now. Your body, you can listen to me and be aware of the sensations in your body. And it also potentially shines into your mind. You can listen to me, look at the slide, be aware of what you're thinking or the state of your mind at this time. So world, body, mind, those domains of awareness. Here's what mindfulness is. Just it's traffic. It's conscious intention to set a balance between being locally attentive and globally aware. Okay? Now, if you attempt to establish that balance right now, and you can do that. Look at the slide, be aware of what I'm saying, but stay aware of the room in which you're sitting, the sensations in your body, and what you're thinking in your mind. So there's a local attention and a global awareness. That's the state of mindfulness. Now, opposite of the state of mindfulness is the state of attentional fixation. Now that happens when all of the conscious resource that you have, we can't be conscious of everything. And so all of your conscious resource gets funneled through the beam of your attention in a highly emotional state. That's what happens, okay? And when your attention fixates, awareness dims. You have less access to frontal lobe capacities, executive capacities. Awareness dims, and you operate more out of the emotional, the limbic brain, the reflexive, the reptilian brain. The responses that come from you are based on fight, flight, or freeze responses in that case. Okay, so that's attentional fixation. That's the mother of the beast. Now, if you stay fixed for a long time, now there's a body that is coupled, neurologically coupled to your story. And so you stay stuck in a certain story in your head, and you're sensitized to certain narratives. And what does sensitization mean? It means amplification. It means things don't stay the same, they get bigger over time. You keep doing the same thing over and over, and it's like practicing, you get better at it. Okay, and so this is a very simple way of explaining the feedback loop, so that it starts with attentional fixation that amplifies the emotion, and the neurosurgery of the amygdala and other brain areas associated with anxiety activate, chemical changes, cortisol and adrenaline is released. The more you do that, it creates propensity for more in the future. So then a cycle of repetition, and then you're in the loop. This is how chronic pain amplifies in a system. The pain signal arises. There's an appraisal of the signal. Oh, I hate this. That hating, you can't get chronic pain to go away by, there is absolutely no way. If you're in a relationship with your chronic, and your relationship is one of, I hate this, you're amplifying this. You're using your one nervous system, emotionally focus on something, and something only makes it bigger. But that's the same thing that happens in depression and anxiety, addictions, chronic pain, eating disorders, you name the thing, PTSD. These are all simple of stress-related conditions that amplify. All right, now here's how a story, a theme of a narrative in your mind can lead to a stress-related condition. So this slide from oh gosh, I am forgetting her name right now. Goodness. It will come to me, I'm sure. Cognitive behavioral therapy for chronic pain. The stress appraisal connection was, the stress appraisal coping model was explicated in that book. It's an older reference, but it still holds. And Beverly Thorne identified 2 appraisals, and I fleshed it out a little bit being a meditator, and I added a few more. So I've listed 5 appraisals here. that are what we call negative appraisals. The sixth, a challenge appraisal, we'll get to that. That's not necessarily a negative appraisal, but and let me define a negative appraisal. If you fixate on a loss and you stay that way, a negative appraisal would mean that life is going to get worse if you stay in that fixated state. And so let me explain how. So a loss appraisal arises when you experience anything where something precious to you is you lose something precious to you, like the loss of a loved one, the loss of health. You get a cancer diagnosis, that could be a loss appraisal. And in any situation where you lose something that is precious to you, the emotion of sadness is a natural thing that arises for us. My daughter Alana, we had just recently, there was this beautiful hummingbird that was coming to our feeder, and what we noticed, usually hummingbirds just flap and fly while they drink, but this hummingbird would flap its wings, fly, 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 hang on the chain, flap, fly, fly, hang on the chain, fly, 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 hang on. So we named this hummingbird the tired hummingbird. And we came out the other day and we noticed little tired hummingbird was dead. And Alana immediately started to cry. Why? The loss appraisal emerged in her. And so that's, if you're sad about anything, I just want you to know you're experiencing a loss in your life. We all do this. Now, there are two types of threatening situation. One is an acutely threatening situation. You know, you're parked at a stoplight and you hear screeching tires behind you. Your body knows immediately that the sound of the tire is communicating threat. Oh no, right? And that a threat appraisal is, threat one at least, is going to cause fear to arise. Now, threat two is also threatening, okay? I want you to know, but in a different way. It's chronically threatening. And so, like, think all of the stress that we've experienced with COVID, the financial, the kids at home. Many people now, these days, addiction has gone up, depression has gone up, suicidality has gone up, anxiety has gone up. Why? Because people are living with a narrative inside their minds that tells them, I can't handle this anymore. This is killing me. And that causes this amorphous emotion of overwhelm, distress and overwhelm to arise. More gets more. It's too much. Now, inadequacy appraisal is one that we often live with because of the family in which we grew up, or the bullying we experienced as children. Just culturally, we might not be the right size or color or whatever, and we develop a narrative where we feel like we're inadequate. That is the basis. That narrative is the basis for a lot of shame that we carry with us. An injustice appraisal is one where that gets initiated when something happens that feels unfair to us. It can actually be unfair, or we can just have the habit of seeing injustices everywhere. But in either case, anger is the emotion. All right, so now here's a list of emotions. We are all going to experience these, and you know where they come from now. They are determined by the appraisal that our mind body makes in a certain context, okay? A challenge appraisal is not categorized as a negative appraisal because it can be a positive response to a negative situation where you say, I'm going to handle this. This is a spiritual challenge. I'm going to meet it. And in which case you would feel determined. Now, every single one of these emotions has their own biomechanical signature. The chemistry of our brain and our body comes in response, in correspondence to the narratives, the appraisals in which we're embedded. All right, now let's say you stay fixated. Now we'll go back to attentional fixation and how that's the mother of the beast. You stay fixated on a story of loss for a long time. Brain circuitry changes, chemistry regulates, and this is where depression emerges out of. It emerges context in most cases. Now I know that a very small percentage of depression can hit you like a flu, and is we can't really tie it to a context, but the vast majority, over 95%, is context dependent, as is anxiety. Addictions, there isn't an addiction gene. Now, we born with biological susceptibilities, the context in which we live, the environment, the experiences that we have, the way we learn to cope, and the narratives that emerge out of our living life that cause a person to move or even conceive that using this substance or acting out this behavior over and over again, despite the consequences, is something that, you know, makes some modicum of sense, right? All right, so anger is an emotion which has some benefit at certain times. It can move you in the direction of change, but there's no good reason for rage. And determination, even determination, if you stay fixated, can turn into OCD type behaviors. And I'm not, this slide should read not OCD, it's OCD type behaviors, where you just can't let anything go. So these stress-related patterns, they don't fulfill any purpose. Emotions, there's a purpose, telling you about life, assisting you in making good choices, but depression isn't good for anything. Neither is anxiety or an addiction, rage, or OCD. These are distortions of normal emotions. And we're going to talk about distortions and a little bit later. But now let's talk about how I'll give you a systems perspective on how stories make us sick. Because the story of me, that personal dialogue, the understanding of the self, that's the primary fixation. Now let's explain how it emerges in real time. Okay, so we're all embedded in a context. We live in a world, we have a mind that thinks and a body that feels. Now, certain situations, contexts are triggering. We get an email, we read it, we're triggered. We have thoughts in the mind, sensations in the body. Now, if we are already sensitized to certain repetitious themes, what's going to happen is we're going to continue, by and large, to follow the meaning that we've generated in the past. We just stay in the flow. Now, how the meaning arises and constructs itself inside of us is sights and sounds in the world, meaningful, the thoughts in our mind, and I use the word talk and image to delineate the two types of thoughts. We have sound-like thoughts, we'll call talk, and we have pictures, we'll picture-like thought, call image. We'll talk about those later in another slide. And we have two types of sensations in our body that are meaningful. We have touch sensation. That's my word for all physical type sensations. Warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, pains, itches, joint position sense. Those are all touch sensations. They're telling you about your body. Now, feel sensations are emotional type sensations. Like if I got sad and I got a lump in my throat, that's telling me about my trachea. It's telling me that I'm sad. So those are feel sensations. And you put all of those together, and all of that meaning produces, I lost my, hold on one sec, I lost, I lost my vision of the Uh-oh. Let me see here. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, I clicked away for a moment and I lost my slides. All right. So as I was saying, this is how the story of me gets started. All this meaning is flowing into the mind, body, world system. Now, repetitious self-talk over time, coupled with fixation, can lead to stress-related conditions. I hope you can understand that now. Now, what do we do when we're mindful? We try to, mindfulness is, in a sense, a deconstructive meditation. Mindfulness takes the parts apart. There's a perspective that lives above, we call it the witness or awareness, that lives above the story, that sees the story as a story. It sees, awareness sees sights and sounds as a part of the experience. Talk and image, thoughts in mind as a part of the image. The sensations in body, touch and feel, a part of the story. You see, it's all of these parts come together to make the whole. And so mindfulness is deconstructive, where depression, when you're depressed, being depressed is depressing. The depression has you, you don't have it. And so depression is a constructive practice. It takes sights and sounds, thoughts and sensations and makes something bigger. Anxiety is the same thing, sights and sounds, thoughts and sensations. It makes something bigger. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is an internal process that balances awareness and attention and deconstructs experience. All right, good. Now, let me just, another way of sort of explaining the same flow is this slide here. Stories are making us sick. We're embedded in a context always. Let's say we're sitting at the stoplight, and let's say not only are we sitting at a stoplight, we're a chronic back pain patient who's been rear-ended before. We hear the screeching tires. Appraisal is made by the body. Okay, and an appraisal is a gut level, it's an instantaneous, the sound carries the message. There's milliseconds before there's discursive thought. The body reacts first. And then discursive thought, automatic, oh no, it's, oh shit, this is gonna happen. And then the belief in all of this, why does this happen to me? And then the coping habits, whatever they are. And a person gets locked into their own habit of coping, and they amplify inadvertently now, they amplify the narrative through catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is seeing the negative in everything, the worst in everything. And hypervigilance is another word for that fixated attention, that he's actually looking for the worst. And you couple those together, catastrophizing and hypervigilance, and you have a mind-body network that is trapped in its own, trapped in the process of making things worse. Okay, now, very quickly, I got this slide from, I want to show you how we're going to deconstruct this. And I got this slide from the International Academy for the Study of Pain, the 4-part pain processing model. So we start with a pain experience. That's the moment of contact. That's when the sound of the tires register. Now that's going to initiate the instantaneous sensations in your body, touch and feel. Again, it's pre-verbal, and these are appraisals now. And you can't change appraisals on the fly. You can change them over time through learning. And this is really where a person is powerless. You're powerless over contact. And there's a Tibetan word called Shenpa, which means you're hooked. So the pain experience that arises hooks you. The very next thing that arises in the nervous system is the sense of unpleasantness. Again, you can't really do anything about unpleasantness, but the emotion begins to construct itself at this time because all of a sudden now there's the beginning of discursive thought, a sense of self, the emotional body plus mental imagery and mental talk. That's the core of the ego. It's reflexive at this point because it's happened so fast. And in this moment, everyone's always concerned about a short-term concern. Now, suffering, however, suffering is an extension of the pain experience. That's where the gross emotion, think of all those distortions, the depression, the anxiety, the addictions, that's when you're in it for a while. Let's say the car does not hit you, but you get triggered and you have a horrible pain experience the rest of the day and weeks and months after not getting hit by the car because you're stuck in the gross emotion. And that is characterized by craving and aversion. These are distortions and the story of me. All right. Now, this is the lock that we have of attention with your intention. Unless you liberate your intention to seeing there's a different way of doing things, look what I'm doing, let me intend something different, you're stuck. Now, the pain behavior comes from the actual acting out. The behavior then begets becoming. And becoming is like you have to work your way, in most cases, into depression, anxiety, and addiction. It's a learned thing that you enact over time. It's less a disease that overtakes you. It's more of an inadvertent activity that once the ball gets rolling, enacts itself. And the becoming happens as a result of the doing. Now, I'm going to separate these two pair, the first pair on the left and the second pair on the right. Now, which ones in your mind do you have some influence over? The ones on the right or the ones on the left? Hopefully, you're thinking the ones on the right, because in this moment, mindfully, your current level of mindfulness can, and this is really strange, this is what this study found, that current levels of the later stages, so think of suffering and pain behavior. Let's say I really dampen or eliminate the suffering and pain behavior. That can influence the level of my pain that I will experience in the future. And that's how we learn our way into it, and we can learn our way out of it. And so if we take the suffering out of the equation, pain behaviors stop making less sense. And do we still have unpleasant experiences? Like I said, you are powerless over contact and having emotions. That's not going to change. But if you add mindfulness to those experiences, what you do is you give yourself a great gift where you put a box around all of the pain that you're going to have in your life. You won't amplify the intensity, nor will you prolong the duration. So that's the best way to process pain. Now, we affect the flow of all of this information: sight, sound, talk, image, touch, feel. Those 4 bits, if you think of those 4 as the alphabet that writes the words and the sentences and the paragraphs and the chapters of your story, you affect the flow of that information by working inside the mind. Now, the mind itself is like a space. What I want you to do is I want you to look at the screen in front of you, but notice the space between your nose and the screen. Mind is like that. Things can arise and pass through it. It's empty. Okay, and it's also, but the thing about mind is luminous, meaning it can know things. And so it's like a knowing space. there's your consciousness again. That's the knowing aspect that's in the space. There is no little man or woman in there. There's just an awake space behind your eyes. Now you can intentionally direct the flashlight of your attention, and I'm going to get you to do a mindfulness exercise in just a moment, but let me set this up. I'm going to ask you to set your intention. Go back to that last slide where we said attention and intention locked in. Well, if you liberate your intention, which I'm hoping we can get you to do right now, you can make some changes in the way your consciousness functions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open our awareness, and I'm going to open it for you into the world, the body, and the mind. I will lead this guided meditation. I'm going to ask you to place your attention and stay aware of the whole space of your awareness. Are you ready to do that now? Matt, may I ask how much more time do I have, please?
About 5 minutes. So.
Okay, I've got to wrap this up. So let me just real quick. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask everyone to focus on the orange dot. Okay, now set the intention to place your attention and do your best to try to limit the time that your mind wanders. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the orange dot. Okay, so you're locally attentive of that, but stay aware of the space of the room, meaning don't move your eyes, but be aware of right, left, up, and down, and the space in between your nose and the screen. Open your ears the same way. Hear the whole space of the room. Now, embody your awareness. Be aware of everything that you feel on the outside and on the inside of your body, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. And then be aware of the mind as well. And when you're aware of your mind, just imagine where your brain is, right behind your eyes. And imagine looking at the orange dot from back there. Behind your eyes, in between your ears, look at the dot from there and notice the space that's looking. So be aware of mind, body, world, all at the same time. Don't space out, and be attentive to the orange dot. Notice that it's lighter on top, darker on the bottom. Okay, stay aware, balance your awareness and your attention. Local attention, global awareness. This is mindfulness. Now, in this state of mind, you can monitor and modify where is your attention, how aware am I, and you can have access to your higher brain functions, your intentions, your agreements, your values. All of that is available when you stay mindful. You can filter how you speak. You can relate to others. You can attune to them. You can sense into yourself, others and situations with acceptance and care and a wish for a higher good. All that's available in this state of mind. All right. So wonderful. I'm going to break you out of that. Boom. And thank you so much. Let me just open this all up for discussion. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah,
and
so
also, please, just one more thing. Just if anybody wants to connect with me, there's my email right there, Mark. It's Skillfully Aware. I would love to dialogue. I don't know who's on the call, but I love connecting with colleagues. Okay, Matt, I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Mark. This is a fascinating presentation, a synthesis of information and concepts, and I just really appreciate it. Right now, we didn't have any questions come into the chat room. If anyone does have one, they can certainly pop it in. We can just got a couple of minutes, so not a lot of time, but while we're waiting to see if anyone puts one in, I wonder, Mark, for people who this is new to them, rehabilitation professionals, for example, what might be the simplest or most basic starting place to integrate some of these principles that come from mindfulness and narrative medicine and so on into their healthcare practice?
Well, I would say get a teacher first. Take some sort of training, MBSR training or you can contact me, but there are plenty of avenues. There's plenty of ways to get some mindfulness training. Before you start applying it in the clinical setting, it's really important that you understand how to be mindful from the inside out. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, you're just going to be thinking about being mindful, which is just another narrative that you're stuck in.
Yeah, great. One other question, and actually this was a prepared question, but I realize in listening to you talk here, for me, you've already answered this, so I'm going to put it out there anyway, that given that our healthcare system splits off the psychosocial realities or factors of people's lives from their physical health, how do you safely approach the idea that one's storylines, beliefs, cognitions, emotions can be a contributing factor to these patterns that get set up? And for me, I think you've answered that, but if you have anything you'd add here in the last minute, it's welcome to that concept.
Well, yeah, I think I'm trying to evangelize that crossover is what I'm really trying to do, Matt, is because when I did work as a primary physical therapist, the system prevented me from moving in the direction of talking about these psychosocial factors. Now, psychologists, for whatever reason, feel less inhibited and they jump right into chronic pain and the body, but it doesn't. What I'm trying to do is give physical therapists, occupational therapists, and those who work in the rehabilitative fields license to move into the gray area themselves once they understand the connection between the mind and the body.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you sharing your expertise, your wisdom, along with that expertise. And thank you everyone for listening. All of our recordings are available on our ACRM YouTube channel. This one will be up within the next 24 to 48 hours, or certainly by Monday. So please do recommend this webinar series to your colleagues and share this webinar by Dr. Mike Pirtle as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye now.